Okay, so are you ready to do something a little bit different? Yep, this module is about social psychology or sociology. Social psychology is the study of how we think about and influence and relate to other people. It's not just about you. It's not just about the individual, how they think and feel and behave. No, it's about how the individual thinks and feels and behaves in perspective to the group and how that individual affects, in turn, the group. Pretty cool, right? Let's go. So there's this word, person perception, how we form impressions of ourselves and others, including attributions of behavior. And there's this term called attribution error. And it's an error because we do this a lot and it's often erroneous or a mistake. The fundamental attribution theory says that there's two ways we judge others. We judge them dispositionally or situationally. And let's take the example of the mean waitress. We've all gone to the restaurants or to a place to eat, and here comes a mean waitress. When the waitress walks away and she's mean, she's huffy and puffy while she's taking your order, she looks like she doesn't want to be there, and when she walks away, what might you say to someone sitting across the table? You might call her a word. She's such a blank, you might say. Fill in the blank with whatever you think. And you're judging her disposition based on a 30-second interaction. Is that even fair? That's why it's called an attribution error. It's often not correct because think about it. She might really be in a bad mood. She might be huffy and puffy about something other than her job. Something terrible might have happened that morning, like maybe her car tire went flat on the way to work, or maybe her puppy is sick or something awful like that, right? We're judging her disposition. We're not giving her that leniency of the situation, yet we apply it to ourselves. When we judge ourselves situationally. So when you behave badly, do you call yourself a blank? You say, I'm such a blank. No, chances are you'll say, I'm sorry, I behaved badly because, and then you give an excuse. My mom yelled at me this morning, or my teacher was really unusually ornery this morning, and you blame it on somebody else. That's judging a person by the situation. And here's the kicker. We judge others dispositionally often, and we judge ourselves situationally. And again, that's an error, attribution error. So I guess a key takeaway here is to remember that the attribution error happens even if you know about it. So even if I'm teaching you this and you're learning it, you're still likely to do it. So it's important to remember that our attributions really do matter as to our behavior and our thoughts about other people. Oh, the social comparison theory. Social comparison talks about how we compare ourselves to other people, and there's no other place where we do that the most is social media, right? How many Instagram likes you have or how many Instagram followers you have, right? All that plays a huge role in what people think of you and how you think of yourself, unfortunately. Okay, I know you've heard these words before. What is prejudice? Prejudice, by definition, is a prejudgment or an unjustifiable and usually negative attitude towards a group and its members. And there's ingredients to prejudice. There's 3 ingredients mainly. Stereotyping, which is a generalized belief about people, like a blanket statement that a person might make. The second one is discrimination, which is an action, usually negative and unjustifiable, towards a member of whatever group that you're discriminating against. And then last but not least, we have negative emotions such as hostility and fear. Remember the difference between prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice is thinking, it's a thought, right? And the reason why we're quick to stereotype and prejudge is because it lessens our cognitive load. There's less to think about. If you already have a pre-notion or a prejudgment, you might use it when it's not justified. Now, discrimination is different from this because that is an actual action. It's something that you're doing because of a prejudgment or a stereotype. Get the difference? Prejudgment, prejudice, thinking. Discrimination, action. Okay, so here comes these two words again that you've heard before, explicit versus implicit, right? So remember explicit versus implicit when we talked about cognition and memory? Well, there is explicit prejudice and implicit prejudice. Explicit prejudice, you're aware of it, you're completely conscious of it, and you're doing it or not doing it, and you are aware. So that's explicit. But implicit, you are unaware, you're unconscious. And so you're not even made aware of some of the feelings that you're harboring. And I'll give you a quick example. A lot of adults, when they ask me what I do for a living, and I say I'm a teacher, they'll say, oh, what do you teach? And I guess I come off as an elementary school teacher because they often think I teach elementary. I'll say, oh, I teach high school. And they all of a sudden their face changes. They're like, oh, you teach high school? Oh. Like they feel sorry for me. And I'm just like, I like it. Like, they're really nice. Like high school kids are really nice. And they're looking at me like I have 3 heads. Why? Because they harbor prejudice against teenagers. That's right, against you. And these adults are probably the same adults that they're walking through the mall and they see a group of teenagers walking by. They're going to clutch their purse a little tightly. They're going to think these teenagers are crazy and they're wild and they're all drug users and they commit crimes. And honestly, there's nothing farther from the truth. I mean, yeah, teenagers get into trouble. Yeah, their frontal lobe isn't fully developed, but are they bad? I don't think that they are inherently bad. I don't. I've had really good experiences over the years. So my, attitude is pretty positive about teaching in high school, but not everybody feels that way. And a lot of that reaction is completely implicit. They have like an implicit prejudice against teenagers because of what they hear on the news or what other people say, but they don't have a lot of face-to-face engagement with teenagers on a daily basis for many years like I have. It's a big difference. These are different themes and topics that you might see in the future, maybe in the form of an essay, maybe in the form of multiple choice. So this chart above me is not decoration. This is full of good information, study, and remember. So here are a couple of vocab terms you have to know in sociology. The just world phenomenon, the tendency for people to believe that the world is just and people get what they deserve. And maybe that's a way for us to also sleep better at night. When you see that homeless person on the street, you go home and you might think, well, it's because they don't want to work. Or, maybe you judge their disposition and you might say, well, they're lazy or they're weak. They take drugs, which is why they can't work. That's the just world phenomenon. You're thinking that bad things happen to bad people when that's not necessarily true. Now, the in-group, out-group bias theory is saying that people start to develop an in-group and they start to kind of maybe have prejudices or discriminate against the out-group. I've been at Western High School for many, many years, and so our nemesis is Cypress Bay. My in-group are the Western Wildcats. The out-group is everybody else, right? So when we play against any other team, I'm a Wildcat, forevermore. And so that's my in-group. And who we're playing against, that's my out-group. This slide is trying to explain some of the terms that you need to know regarding negative emotions, like scapegoat theory. And you know what? Sometimes scapegoat theory is something that individuals do to help them feel better. You blame others when things go wrong and in order to target your anger elsewhere. It's easier than blaming yourself. But you also have to know other terms like other race effect and victim blaming. These are all wrapped up in negative emotions. Have you ever heard of the blue eye, brown eye experiment? It was conducted many years ago. It's a famous experiment done by a 3rd grade teacher named Jane Elliott in Riceville, Iowa. And what she did was she divided her class and she told everybody, okay, we're going to do this game like an experiment. They were like, yay! They had no idea what was coming. And she had one group be on top and then one group be on bottom. And she did it based on eye color. So she was judging them and treating them based on their eye color color alone. So you had the light eyes group, right, the blue-eyed group, and then you had the dark eyes group, the brown-eyed group. And she divided her kids this way. And here's what she found out. When you are on the bottom group, right, when you are being discriminated against and your teacher is like writing you for everything, not only did you feel bad about yourself, but you actually did poorly on tests. She found that when she did like reading instruction and reading drills, she found that they did worse on the day that they were down, and they did way better on the day that they were up. So when they viewed themselves as superior people when they were in the up group, their test reflected that. And when they were on the down group, their test reflected that too. Isn't that something? And so they ran with this. Stanford made a documentary, and there's lots to read about it. There's also a book called The Eye of the Storm. Get it? The Eye. We're Floridians. We know what the eye of the storm is. And so it's very interesting, very famous. Know her name, Jane Elliott, and it's the blue-eye, brown-eye experiment. I showed it in class. If you didn't see it in class, you make sure that you see it. We're going to be talking about attitudes in class, and do you know that attitudes affect actions? That's right, your behavior will follow an attitude. And do you know also actions affect your attitude? That means your attitude follows a behavior that you display. Yes, and these things are very powerful because it does change your opinions and your thoughts and of course your behavior. Now, there's two words on the slide you have to know: foot in the door, door in the face. Foot in the door phenomenon is when you ask for a small request. If they grant it, you're likely to get the larger request. Here's an example. Mom, can I have 20 bucks this week? 20 bucks? Sure. Okay, that seems, fair. And then you could say, okay, after they agreed to the 20, you could say, I'm sorry, can I have 30 because prices at school are kind of high. Like the prices for chocolate chip cookies have gone up. So can I have 30 bucks this week? And they might say yes because they agreed to the 20. They go from here, they agree to this, and they agree to the next request. Just because they agreed to the first request, that's foot in the door. Now, door in the face is the opposite. Mom, can I have 150 bucks this week? 150 bucks for what? Don't say cookies. Door in the face is when you ask for a big request that might not seem fair, and then you could drop it down to something that's fair. Oh, just kidding, 25 bucks will be fine. And then they're likely to give you the $25. When you go high and then you drop down to low, that's door in the face. Try it and let me know how it works out. One of my favorite words in social psychology is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive means any and all mental elements, and dissonance means like a disagreement. When something is dissonant, it almost feels like it's wrong to us, right? And so when you have two competing thoughts, one like, I'm awesome, and then the next one is like reality. I just failed the test. But my original thought is, I'm awesome, but then you fail the test. That causes cognitive dissonance. And then we have to say, okay, I'm awesome, but I failed the test. Then we justify. Then we'll say, well, that teacher wasn't fair and that test wasn't fair. I'm still awesome. That's cognitive dissonance. What'd you do to make yourself feel better? You gave an excuse. You were justifying and rationalizing that it wasn't the test that stumped you, and it's certainly not your intelligence. It's the teacher's fault, right? Cognitive dissonance, when two things are incompatible and then you justify to get a reaction. In class, I showed you like a crazy AP Psych teacher that made a song up and sang it with a guitar using cognitive dissonance. Yeah, the things that we do. Have you ever thought of what persuades you to purchase things that you see online? The ads maybe, or when you see your favorite celebrity pushing a product, right? Have you ever wondered about the art of persuasion? Well, there's two ways they persuade us to purchase things, two ways they persuade us to do a lot of things, and it's central route of persuasion and peripheral route of persuasion. And most advertisements use both central and peripheral. So remember that central is going to be an attitude change focusing on an argument or fact. So let's talk about, I think in class I brought up the stuff for your face, what's it called? Proactive, right? When people use Proactive, it's because they're fighting acne, right? And so in the commercial, if you watch a Proactive commercial, it gives you information of how Proactive works, how the liquid activates, how it does something, how the chemicals go into the pimple and it kind of gets rid of your pimple and it gives you this beautiful complexion. It explains the facts to you. That's the central route of persuasion. But here's how they get us. They get our favorite celebrity, Justin Bieber, Jessica Simpson, a bunch of people were the face of Proactive. Adam Levine was a face of Proactive for a while. And they get a celebrity, a pretty face, to go on TV or on social media, and they'll say, see this stuff works great for me. This was my before and after. And before and after pictures are very convincing for us. When we see the before and then we see the after, we want in on that. And that's how they use peripheral route of persuasion, a pretty face, a celebrity, to sell you the product. So remember, central is data and facts. Peripheral is everything on the outside. That's the pretty face or a famous person. One of my favorite topics in social psychology is the topic of conformity. And conformity is alive and well, even in today's day and age. You might think it's not, but it is. And conformity is when you comply with social pressures. You do what everybody else is doing. And look around. Look at hairstyles and fashion. And in this slide, I gave there's a picture of the guy with all these tattoos. I'm talking about tattoos. In the 60s and 70s, tattoos were worn by gangsters, by people that rode motorcycles and they wore leather jackets, or they were in jail, and that's why they had tattoos. But not anymore. Everyone and their grandma has a tattoo now. And there's a guy like sporting a full sleeve. Tattoos are now very commonplace. What happened? Was it conformity when we saw one person get a tattoo, then somebody else got it, and now pretty much a lot of people have it. Some people don't, and some people do. Conformity happens for several reasons. You should know the reasons why you're more likely to conform and less likely to conform, and that's going to be through the study of this topic, okay? Now, there's a couple of other words that go with conformity, like the chameleon effect. Humans naturally and unconsciously mimicking one another, like the yawning. Mood linkage, when you go into a room and everyone's laughing, chances are you're walking and smiling, that the mood links up to you, and we conform to the group. If they're having a good time and they're laughing, you're laugh too. If they're all down and sad, you'll be down and sad too. So we even conform to like the group situation. Now, positive hurting, positive ratings or websites causes other people to give positive ratings. So watch out for this the next time you're scrolling through your social media. Look at ads and look at how people will start to compliment. Now, it's interesting because a lot of times when people put ads on social media, they'll ask their friends, go on there, give me a 5-star rating, say something nice. When people say something nice, it actually increases the likelihood of other people viewing your product favorably. It's all a mastermind. Okay, do you see the lines right here? See those lines? Look at those lines very closely. Which lines, 1, 2, or 3, matches the standard line? Come on, say it out loud. Did you say number 2? That is correct, because number 2 matches the standard line. But what if 4 people out loud said with confidence that it was number 1, something that's clearly wrong? Would you be coerced to also say the wrong answer on purpose? That's exactly what Solomon Asch did in his test. He tested adults very much like yourself, similar age, and he asked them a really simple question that a kindergartner can get right. Which line matches the standard line? And when people hear the wrong answer on purpose out loud, guess what? They conform and they say the wrong answer also. And it is exciting to watch. It still happens. Is it considered unethical? Not so much, so long as you debrief your participant afterwards. But this is a great experiment. It's been done since the 50s and it still works today. Now, the reason why we conform, a couple of reasons. Normative social influence is one reason, and that's you're conforming because you want to gain approval approval, or you want to avoid disapproval from people. Another reason why we conform is informational social influence. We want to be correct. We want to be respected with our opinions in today's reality. So there's two reasons why we do this: in normative social influence and informational social influence. And who's our guy? Solomon Asch. Stanley Milgram also studied conformity, but a little differently than Solomon Asch did. He didn't study conformity to peer pressure like Asch did. He studied conformity to authority. How far will people go? How far will they exert their influence or exhibit a behavior just because a person that they perceive to be an authority told them to do so? There's a little kind of diagram right there. Do you see it? And this is where the learner and the teacher, and then of course the experimenter, it shows you the layout of how he did this experiment. You have to know this experiment very well, so I really highly, strongly advise that you view the videos that I have posted because the video tells you the story. It's the best way to learn an experiment is to watch it happen and watch it unfold. Now, remember that the only real shock ever given was to the person that was coming in, just that one sample shock. Everything else was a fake. So remember that the whole test was, will a person go all the way up to 450 volts and hurt another person just because a guy in a white lab coat told you to? That's dangerous, and that's following authority blindly. And that's what Milgram wanted to prove. It wasn't just the Germans, right, that became good Nazis. Anyone could be a Nazi. Anyone could follow the authority figure and do horrible things. That's what he wanted to set out and prove, and he did. Now, was it unethical? Absolutely. It's considered one of the most unethical experiments ever performed. But did we learn a lot from it? Absolutely we did. And so you have to know Milgram's study. Just learn it. I thought this was a great picture. Don't conform. Be that guy. That guy. Okay, so at school and in class, we did a practice applying our research knowledge to this particular experiment. And I think it's important that you're able to kind of tear up this experiment, know it really well, and be able to apply your research terms. And of course, here are the answers to those questions. So review. If you got something wrong and you don't understand, make sure when you go to class, ask me. Yes, in class, I showed a real-life example that really happened where a person followed authority blindly to the detriment of this victim. So, yeah, it's called the phone scam. It's all over the place. They even did like a movie about it, but we're never going to see that in class. But it's real. So these are things that Milgram taught us that could happen, that did happen, unfortunately. Speaking of unethical experiments, another very famous experiment that was considered highly unethical, probably even more so than Milgram, was the famous Stanford prison experiment conducted by Dr. Philip Zimbardo. And in this experiment, he's talking about how we can dehumanize, right, other people. We don't see them as human anymore. We see them as objects. He also talks about the power of the situation, how when he disseminated those roles as guards and prisoners, people became the guards, people became the prisoners. They fulfilled their roles, and in a matter of hours it was going wrong very, very badly. So his original plan to conduct this experiment had to be cut short because people had real stress reactions. So learn the Stanford prison study. It's very, very interesting. It doesn't get more interesting than this, seriously. It's so interesting. And this is also where he came up with the term called Lucifer effect, that anyone has the potential for evil if the power of the situation warrants it. So this slide talks about social facilitation versus social inhibition. Sometimes, right, and for some people it might be different, the group watching you gives you energy. Like you might perform like a soccer star during the game, but at practice, not so much. And your coach knows it and yells at you about it. That's social facilitation. You're a soccer star when the fans are in the stadium, they're looking at you, they're cheering you on. That gives you that that extra energy. That's social facilitation. But if it's the other way around, you're a soccer star during practice when nobody's watching. You're a soccer star in your backyard when you're alone. But when the people fill the stands and the eyes are all on you, you fall apart. You crumble under the stress of the people watching you. That's called social inhibition, right? You're a rock star in the shower singing, but when you go to karaoke night and all your friends are there, you fall apart. Social inhibition. Now, social loafing is something funny. I know you've at least seen this or maybe experienced it firsthand. When your teacher puts you in a group and say it's a group of 4, one person or 2 people do nothing, that's called social loafing. They're not evil. They just can get away with it, and people will take the least, the path of least resistance, just an easier way out. Social loafing. And de-individuation is when you kind of lose yourself. This happens with social behavior. So it happens like at a really great concert, right? You lose who you are, and you're singing and you're dancing in front of hundreds of people and nobody cares. It's because you're not you anymore. You are the group. You are the crowd. That's probably a fantastic concert. I make charts. Look at the chart. This is not decoration. This is great to study with. So look at this at a glance chart. Tells you everything that you need to know. And look at the 3 phenomenon and know the difference between each. You can't get more extreme talking about groups than groupthink, mind guarding, and group polarization. All things that cults do. Cults do not allow you to think for yourself. You do not have critical thinking. Someone else is critically thinking for you. That's what groupthink is. And when you're in the group, they're also mind guarding you. They're making sure that you're going to be shunned if you say something outside the group's parameters. And this happens with extremism, right? When you have extreme thoughts or extreme behavior, groupthink is probably at the culprit. Another topic in social psychology is culture. Culture plays a very large role in how you think, how you feel, and how you behave. So there's variations across cultures. Know the difference between a tight culture, right, a place with clearly defined and reliably imposed norms, and loose culture, a place with flexible and informal norms. And I guess the United States can definitely be under that headline, right? We're a loose culture. And there's variations over time. Cultures can definitely change. So in the United States, culture has definitely changed. If you look up, from your nap from the 70s and you wake up into today, you'd be very surprised as to all the changes that have taken place. So cultures do change and they are flexible, and I think the USA is probably a great example of that. It's great to have pride in your culture, but it's not good to be ethnocentric. Ethnocentric means that you believe your culture's right and everybody else's is wrong and weird. So it's great to have pride in your culture, yay, but ethnocentric, not a compliment. In social psychology, they also study the phenomenon of aggression and why people aggress. There is a physiological aspect to aggression, and they call it the biology of aggression, that involves genetics. Maybe a person is violent because they have a history of violence in their family. Number 2, neural influences. Maybe it's an overactive amygdala or an underactive frontal lobe. And it also could be biochemical. Maybe too much testosterone, right, can make someone aggressive. So it studies these things with a different kind of a lens. It looks at aggression holistically, like how it compares to individual aggression with aggressive tendencies towards groups. And these are different theories about the factors in aggression. It could be aversive events, things that trigger aggressive thoughts, which lead to aggressive actions. The frustration aggression principle says that maybe frustration causes the anger, which can spark someone to be aggressive. Also, there might be reinforcements in modeling. Maybe you're learning from the environment, like those violent video games that people play. Could a person be learning that language or learning those tendencies because of a video game, or maybe movies and TV shows that they watch? So that also goes under the heading of media models of violence. And also social scripts, the culturally modeled guide for how to act in various situations. It might risk glorifying certain aggressive acts, and it might lead people to take risks and doing these aggressive acts because they think it's part of their social script. Like, you know, a boyfriend might feel like he has to be aggressive to maybe defend his girlfriend. Is that really necessary? Like, what makes him think that this is his role? What makes the boyfriend think that he has to perform this action? That's a social script. If he feels like he has to, that's because something taught him that this is something that they do. So again, social scripts could pan off in a number of different ways. This is a fun topic. What makes you like somebody else and what makes them like you? It could be 4 different aspects. It could be proximity. Maybe you like them because they sit next to you in class. They're near you, right? You always see them. That also plays a role in the mere exposure effect. The more you see them, the more you like them. Number 2, maybe they're similar to you. You guys like the same things. You watch the same shows. You listen to the same music. Number 3 is reciprocity, or reciprocal interaction. You heard they liked you too, so it increases the likelihood of you liking them. And the last one is physical attractiveness. You like what they look like. And what teaches us what's beautiful anyway? And that's society, right? Teaches us what's beautiful and what might not be considered beautiful. And those are the 4 aspects of what makes you like somebody else and them like you. Also, don't forget that first impressions are very, very important, and that has to do with the implicit personality theory, that labels don't travel alone. When you call somebody nice, that label travels with other labels. Like, they're probably a good student and they're probably hard workers. They're probably very reliable, but you just call them nice. Labels have other labels. Okay, in this slide, the most important 2 words are passionate love versus companionate love. Passionate love is like romantic love. Companionate love is like friend love. And it's really important that you read about what facilitates these things and what inhibits them. Very important slide right here. The word is altruism. Years ago, we had altruism. No, we almost have it every year, technically. It either appears in a multiple choice or in one of the essay prompts. Altruism is unselfish regard for the welfare of others. You're giving of yourself to other people. When you're being altruistic, you're being kind and giving of yourself. And the famous case of Kitty Genovese, she was murdered in New York City and nobody helped. Nobody even called the police for her. And that's called the bystander effect. When you see someone in need, but yet you do nothing because you think someone else will take the responsibility, and that's called diffusion of responsibility. Okay, so this slide's important too, because you should know of the ways that people, like, how does diffusion of responsibility happen, and then in turn that leads to the not helping behavior, and then what leads to the helping behavior, where people actually do stop and they help you even though they don't have to. So these are reasons why people help. The social exchange theory basically says that it's like an aim to maximize benefits. You'll help somebody so long as it doesn't cost you too much. And what I mean by that is, like, if you feel like you're going to get hurt yourself, you're probably not going to help. If you feel like you can get in trouble by helping, you're probably not going to help. So that's social exchange theory. Reciprocity norm says that you'll help somebody else because you're thinking, well, if I were in that situation, I would hope somebody would help me. And you're kind of paying it forward. I help this person because I would hope that they would help my loved one or help me. Social responsibility norm basically is like being a good human. Like you do what you think is expected of you to do as a good human. And you might perform this kind act because you think you should, because that's what good humans do. And hey, you're a good human. Another fun thing to study in social psychology is Edward T. Hall's proxemics theory. And he says we have 4 zones. We have the intimate zone, the personal zone, social distance, and public distance. And every culture feels differently about these zones. Like in America, we very much value our space and our privacy, right? So we don't let a lot of people into the intimate zone. Not everyone can just come up to you and touch you or just hug you, right? You have to meet a certain criteria for that. You have to be a friend of mine. You have to be someone that I trust for you to just wrap your arms around me, right? It's not just anyone that can do this. That's your intimate zone. And certain cultures are more flexible about these zones than others. But you live in the United States. You know how it is here. So the personal distance or personal zone here in the States is about 18 inches to 4 feet. A lot of one-on-one conversation takes place here. Then you got your cliques, that's social distance where you're standing, 4 to 12 feet apart. Then you got public distance is what I do in class every day is I teach to a group of 40 kids and I'm talking to the person right in front of me, but I'm also talking to the person way over there. That's public distance.